At 11:42 in the morning on January 27, 1945, oxygen frost crept across the plexiglass as a B-29 climbed through 28,000 feet over the Pacific Ocean. Inside the unpressurized central fire control station, the temperature was more than 50 degrees below zero, and every breath burned. Staff Sergeant Robert Chen, 22 years old. Slim, quiet, and the youngest gunner aboard B-29. A-Square 52 crouched behind his sight-gloved hands, steady on metal controls already stiffening from the cold. On paper, Chen's job was technical and distant aim, 4 remote gun turrets, calculate lead angles, and let a mechanical computer do the math, while the bomber flew straight and level. Beyond the formation, more than 40 Japanese fighters were climbing hard from airfields near Tokyo, closing the gap with engines screaming in thin air. The bomber stream belonged to the 73rd Bombardment Wing flying from Saipan, ordered to strike Tokyo's port facilities in clear weather that demanded visual bombing. That meant 6 minutes of straight flight, no evasive turns, while fighters positioned themselves for perfect firing passes. By mid-January, the wing had already lost 31 B-29s to fighters and flak more than 340 men who did not come back. The most dangerous attackers were Ki-44 interceptors, fast climbers armed with heavy cannon. Some pilots trained to ram bombers once their ammunition ran out. If this formation broke, Tokyo would breathe easier, and the next cruise would face even worse odds. Chen had been briefed at 4 o'clock that morning. 62 bombers and 9 not expected to return. Now the coast of Japan was minutes away, the guns were freezing, and the fighters were already rising to meet them. The bomb run was coming, and once it began, there would be no way to hide. By early 1945, the air war over Japan had entered a dangerous new phase, one neither side had fully predicted. American planners had built the B-29 campaign around altitude. Flying at 28,000 to 30,000 feet was supposed to place superfortresses above most fighters above flak and above the limits of interception. From bases on Saipan Tinian and Guam, bomber streams crossed more than 1,500 miles of open ocean to strike the Japanese home islands. On maps, the distances looked manageable. In the air, they were brutal. Jet stream winds over Japan could reach more than 150 miles per hour, throwing off bomb calculations and forcing formations to fly longer, straighter bomb runs. Temperatures at altitude froze gun mechanisms, oxygen systems, and hands alike. Every mission demanded precision under physical punishment. Japan, meanwhile, was running out of time, fuel, and industrial capacity. Factories clustered around Tokyo Bay were still producing aircraft parts engines and shipping equipment critical to the war effort. Stopping the bombers meant slowing that production even briefly. Japanese interceptor units adapted quickly. Instead of trying to dogfight escort fighters that did not exist at these altitudes, they focused on rapid climbs, frontal attacks, and mass coordination. The Ki-44 Shoki was built for exactly this environment. It climbed faster than most Allied fighters carried heavy cannon and could reach B-29 altitude in minutes rather than half an hour. At high altitude where the air thinned and gunners struggled to breathe, a single fighter could make repeated passes with relative safety. Then came ramming. Beginning in mid-1944, Japanese pilots began deliberately colliding with bombers after expending ammunition. This was not ritual sacrifice. It was arithmetic. A single fighter lost in exchange for a bomber worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and 11 trained airmen was considered acceptable. Special units practiced the technique aiming for engines, wings, or tail surfaces to guarantee destruction. American intelligence knew this. Crews were briefed on it, but knowing did not make it easier to face. Every morning, briefing included estimates. How many bombers would go in? How many might not return? On January 27, 1945, that number was 9. For the men aboard a Square 52, the math was clear. Hold formation and risk ramming attacks. Break formation and die alone. Either way, the line was thin. And once the coast of Japan appeared beneath the clouds, there would be no turning back. Robert Chen did not look like the kind of man people expected to fight a war at 28,000 feet. At 22, slim-built and soft-spoken, he carried none of the swagger often associated with fighter pilots or decorated aces. He was a technician by training, not a trigger puller by reputation. Before joining the Army Air Forces, Chen had learned to trust machines' diagrams and procedures, the quiet discipline of getting numbers right, while others chased noise and motion. That mindset put him in the central fire control station of a B-29, the nerve center of a bomber's defensive system. From that cramped, freezing compartment, Chen controlled 4 remote gun turrets spread across the aircraft's fuselage. He did not sit behind the guns themselves. He aimed through an optical sight fed data into a mechanical computer and trusted servos, motors, and linkages to put .50 caliber rounds where mathematics said they should go. It was advanced technology for its time. It was also unforgiving. At minus 50 degrees, gears stiffened, lubricants thickened, and small errors multiplied quickly. By January 1945, Chen had flown 11 combat missions over Japan. He had fired his guns 3 times in anger. He had never seen an enemy aircraft fall. Some gunners wore that as a quiet frustration. Chen wore it as a reminder. His job was not to chase kills. It was to protect the aircraft, the crew, and the formation one calculation at a time. The bomber depended on calm hands and patience, especially at high altitude where firing too early meant wasted ammunition and empty belts when it mattered most. That discipline would soon be tested beyond anything training manuals described, because on this mission machines would fail, systems would freeze, and survival would depend not on perfect equipment, but on whether one man could keep thinking clearly while everything around him came apart. At 11:58, the bomber formation crossed the Japanese coastline, and radar stations on Honshu picked them up immediately. Within minutes, air raid sirens began to wail across Tokyo, and pilots at nearby airfields ran toward fighters already warming on the flight line. At exactly noon, the first Ki-44s lifted off, climbing hard and fast toward the incoming bombers. Chen saw the first attacker at nearly 12,000 yards, a dark speck rising almost vertically through broken cloud. As it climbed, wings became visible. Then, the blunt radial engine cowling of a Ki-44 filled his sight. The fighter rolled inverted at 27,000 feet and dove toward the lead element of the formation. 3 more followed. Chen rotated his upper forward turret, tracking the diving angle, while the mechanical computer struggled to keep up in the cold. The lead fighter opened fire at roughly 800 yards, tracers arcing upward through thin air. Chen pressed the firing switch. The turret hammered twin .50 caliber guns, sending streams of rounds forward at nearly 2,800 feet per second. The Ki-44 snap-rolled and vanished beneath the formation. Too fast. Too clean. By 12:07, the sky around the bombers was crowded with attackers. Fighters came in from all quadrants, diving at nearly 400 miles per hour, then breaking hard away to escape overlapping defensive fire. Most pilots avoided closing to point-blank range. They still wanted to live. Ramming pilots did not. A call came from the cockpit. Fighter at 200 high. Chen swung the turret. The Ki-44 was sliding into position for a beam attack, nose steady, closing from about 700 yards. Chen waited, counted the lead, and fired a 3-second burst. Armor-piercing incendiary rounds walked across the fighter's flight path. The engine erupted in black smoke. The aircraft rolled inverted and fell away, trailing fire. First confirmed kill. There was no time to react. 2 more fighters were already maneuvering. The right blister gunner engaged one with twin .5s, while the tail gunner called out another, closing from 600 low. Chen slaved the lower aft turret to his sight. He fired, missed. The tail gunner stitched rounds across the fighter's wing route. The aircraft shuddered, skin tearing away. It entered a flat spin and disappeared below the formation. Second kill. At 12:19, the bombers reached the initial point for the bomb run. This was the most dangerous moment of the mission. For 6 minutes, the aircraft would fly straight and level, while bombardiers synchronized their Norden bomb sights. Course changes were forbidden. Evasion was impossible. The fighters knew it. 14 Ki-44s formed up roughly 3,000 feet above the bomber stream. They orbited once, then again, positioning carefully. At 12:21, they rolled in together. Pairs dived simultaneously from 10,000 feet high and 2,000 feet high, forcing gunners to split their fire. Chen tracked the lead fighter in the first pair. Multiple streams of tracers converged. The Ki-44 flew directly into them. Its canopy shattered. The aircraft snap-rolled and collided with its wingman. Both disintegrated in midair. Third and fourth kills, but the second pair was already inside 500 yards. Closing fast. Too fast. Chen swung his sight. The nearer fighter was not jinking, not braking. The pilot had committed. A ramming attack. Chen fired continuously as the range collapsed. 300 yards. At 12:22, the Ki-44 struck a Square 52's No. 3 engine. The impact sounded like steel slamming into steel. The propeller tore free and vanished into space. The B-29 yawed violently as warning lights exploded across the flight engineer's panel. Fire. Oil pressure gone. The aircraft commander shut down both right-side engines. A Square 52 dropped out of formation, losing altitude at 300 feet per minute. Alone. Damaged. And still under attack. 3 Ki-44s broke from the main fight and dove after the crippled bomber. They had altitude. They had speed. Doctrine said damaged bombers were finished quickly. Chen rotated the turret to meet the first attacker. Range 1,000 yards and closing. He forced himself to wait. The computer needed time. At 600 yards, cannon fire punched through the left-wing hydraulic fluid, spraying into the slipstream. Chen fired. A 4-second burst. The fighter's canopy exploded. It rolled left and went down trailing debris. 5th kill. The second fighter attacked from 500 level. The tail gunner engaged first. 6 seconds of fire. No visible effect. The fighter closed to 400 yards. Then the tail guns fell silent. Out of ammunition. Chen slaved the lower aft turret. Hydraulics were sluggish. Pressure dropping. He tracked manually and fired a short burst. Rounds struck the wing root. The wing folded upward. Structural failure. The aircraft tumbled end over end. 6th kill. But the third attacker had been patient. Now it was at 300 high. 300 yards. Wings level. Gun silent. Another ramming run. The right blister gunner opened fire. Hits sparked across the engine. The fighter did not deviate. Chen swung hard right. The turret screamed against its stops. He fired. Missed. Corrected. Fired again. Hits stitched across the fuselage. The Ki-44 struck a Square 52's No. 1 engine. The propeller disintegrated. Fuel sprayed into the slipstream. The fighter broke apart, its tail tumbling across the bomber's back. A 6-foot hole opened in the left wing. Now only one engine remained. The bomber fell through 18,000 feet, and 12 more fighters were already forming up above. By the time a Square 52 fell through 16,000 feet, the fight had stripped away every margin. Hydraulic pressure bled down toward zero. The automated targeting system went dark. The lower turret stopped responding entirely. Only muscle instinct and seconds remained. 12 Ki-44s split into 3 groups of 4 and reformed above the damaged bomber. It was a textbook tactic, one designed to overwhelm healthy aircraft. Against a crippled B-29 flying on a single engine, it was an execution. The aircraft commander ordered everything non-essential thrown overboard. Ammunition cans, toolkits, survival gear. Every pound mattered now. The first group dove from 12,000 feet high. Chen engaged at 900 yards, the upper turret moving sluggishly, hydraulics down to a fraction of normal pressure. He fired. The recoil shook the mount. The fighter jinked. Chen corrected and fired again. Rounds tore into the wing. The structure failed. The aircraft folded and fell. 7th kill. The remaining 3 pressed in together. Cannon fire converged on the bomber from multiple angles. Plexiglass shattered. Freezing air screamed through the fuselage. The bombardier was killed in action instantly. Chen did not look back. He tracked the next attacker manually. No computer, no compensation, only experience. He fired. The burst hit low. The fighter broke away trailing smoke. Improbable. Not enough. The third attacker came nearly vertical. 400 yards. Closing fast. Chen fired a long burst. The gun barrels overheated despite the cold. The round struck the engine. The propeller stopped. The aircraft dropped straight down and vanished into cloud. 8th kill. Then the fourth fighter arrived from 900 level. The left blister gunner engaged. The fighter closed anyway. Cannon rounds ripped through the horizontal stabilizer. Control cables snapped. The bomber yawed hard left. The rudder jammed. Chen slaved the lower turret. It moved 15 degrees, then stopped, dead. The tail gunner fired instead. Mechanically driven, still alive. The rounds hit. The fighter spun. 9th kill. A Square 52 was now at 14,000 feet. Airspeed was falling toward stall. Ammunition counts were nearly gone. The next wave was already inbound. 4 fighters. 2 pairs. Chen had 15 rounds left in the upper turret. He waited. 700 yards. He fired everything in one sustained burst. The tracers converged. The fighter's engine disintegrated. Smoke poured out. It rolled inverted and fell. 10th kill. The guns clicked empty. Chen abandoned the central station and crawled through the narrow tunnel to the rear. The right blister gunner was wounded and could not move. Chen took his place. No power assist. No hydraulics. Pure strength. The next fighter came in firing. 400 yards. Chen led and squeezed the trigger. The recoil hammered his shoulders. The canopy shattered. The aircraft fell spinning. 11th kill. The final pair attacked together. One aimed for the cockpit, the other for the wing root. The tail gunner fired his last rounds. The fighter's windscreen exploded. It fell away. 12th kill. The last attacker pressed in. Chen could not reach it. The left blister gunner fired his final burst. Fuel sprayed. The wing failed. The fighter broke apart. 13th kill. Then there was silence. No ammunition. No turrets. No options. 4 Ki-44s formed up behind the bomber. Not diving, not weaving. They were lining up for ramming runs. One by one. Chen braced himself against the blister frame. The lead fighter accelerated. Half a mile. Then smoke. Not from gunfire. From the engine. The propeller stopped. The fighter fell away, the ramming run aborted by mechanical failure. No shots fired. The remaining fighters broke off. Fuel was gone. The attack was over. A Square 52 was still flying. Barely. When the last Japanese fighters turned away, the sky around a Square 52 felt suddenly empty. Below, the bomber clouds drifted past in silence, broken only by the uneven vibration of a single remaining engine. The battlefield they left behind was scattered across thousands of feet of airspace. Wreckage spiraled downward. Fighters burned out. Others broke apart before they reached the ocean. The tally came later. 14 Japanese fighters destroyed or lost in a single mission. No other bomber in the Pacific theater would match that number. The cost aboard a Square 52 was written in warning lights and empty stations. 2 engines destroyed by ramming attacks. A third shut down. Hydraulic systems barely functional. A 6-foot hole torn into the wing. The rudder jammed. 1 crewman was killed in action. Another was critically wounded. The bomber itself was no longer a weapon. It was a problem that had to be kept airborne. The rest of the formation continued toward Tokyo. Bombs fell on the port facilities as planned. The mission succeeded. For a Square 52, the fight was not over. It had simply changed. At 12,000 feet over hostile water survival, now depended on fuel, math, engine, discipline, and time. Distance to Saipan was still more than 1,500 miles. At their current airspeed, the numbers did not work. Not on paper, not in training manuals, and not for a bomber that had already given everything it had just to stay in the air. The war had taken its shot. Now endurance would decide the rest. Long after the sky over Japan fell silent, the hardest part of the mission still lay ahead. Hour after hour, the crew traded altitude for distance for minutes, and minutes for hope. Decisions were no longer about tactics. They were about endurance. One engine was restarted, knowing it would destroy itself, buying half an hour of airspeed at the cost of certainty. Dead weight was thrown overboard for single-digit gains in range. Electrical systems were shut down one by one to ease the strain on a single surviving radial engine that ran beyond every design limit. Inside the frozen fuselage, there were no speeches. There was only work. A wounded gunner was kept alive without medicine. Heating liners were given up so another man might last longer. When the engine finally quit within sight of Saipan, the bomber became a glider, heavy damaged and unforgiving. It touched down hard. Metal screamed. The aircraft slid off the runway and stopped. 10 men climbed out alive. 2 did not. A Square 52 was written off as a total loss. In official records, the mission became a line of numbers. 14 enemy fighters destroyed. 1 bomber lost. Target hit! For the men who flew it, the meaning was simpler. They had held together when machines failed. They had done their jobs when survival depended on discipline rather than courage. Robert Chen never became famous. Neither did most of the crew. Their war lived quietly in logbooks and memories, and in a bomber that never flew again. If you are watching this today, that silence matters, because history remembers what is repeated. If this story mattered to you, help it reach someone who has never heard it. Click like so this story is shown beyond this screen. Subscribe and turn on notifications if you want more true stories about ordinary crews facing impossible odds. Robert Chen never became famous. Neither did most of the crew. Their war lived quietly in logbooks and memories, and in a bomber that never flew again. If you are watching this today, that silence matters, because history remembers what is repeated. If this story mattered to you, help it reach someone who has never heard it. Click like so this story is shown beyond this screen. Subscribe and turn on notifications if you want more true stories about ordinary crews facing impossible odds. And in the comments, tell us where you are watching from and whether someone in your family served. These stories only survive if we carry them forward.